Today, I watched the 2024 version of The Crow, and I must admit that it didn't resonate with me. However, after exploring various reviews of the franchise, it's clear that the original 1994 film stands out as the best, with the 2024 version being a notable second place. This is significant, considering that the films following Brandon Lee's iconic portrayal have largely fallen flat, often earning low marks in comparison. One of the most commendable aspects of the 2024 film is its deeper exploration of the characters Eric and Shelley. In the original 1994 version, while we understand that Eric and Shelley live in a troubled part of Detroit and are planning to marry on Halloween, their backstories are largely conveyed through flashbacks. This approach is effective, as it quickly establishes their tragic circumstances, including the horrific assault on Shelley that ultimately leads to her death. While the brevity of these scenes is impactful, the 2024 film takes a different approach, providing a more fleshed-out narrative that allows audiences to connect with Shelley on a deeper level. In the 2024 film, Eric is placed in a psychiatric rehabilitation center, and the filmmakers take the time to delve into his traumatic childhood. We learn about his alcoholic mother, the death of his beloved horse, and a tragedy involving a younger sibling that adds layers to his character. While the 1994 film effectively portrays Eric's loneliness, anger, and mental health struggles, the 2024 version attempts to give him a more comprehensive backstory, which is appreciated. Shelley's character also receives more depth in the 2024 adaptation. We discover that she is on the run from Vincent, a mafia boss with supernatural powers. The film introduces a compelling narrative element in which Shelley possesses footage of Vincent's satanic abilities that showcase the extent of his cruelty. This backstory adds complexity to her character and explains her desperation to escape, allowing her relationship with Eric to develop more organically. In contrast, the original film presents Shelley more as a tragic victim whose brutal assault and subsequent death resonate deeply with audiences, especially given the prevalence of violence and sexual assault in society. However, the manner in which Shelley is killed in the 2024 version is less impactful than the original. In this version, her death involves being suffocated with a plastic bag and thrown into the water, tragic yet not as brutally visceral as the original depiction, where she suffered a horrific sexual assault that led to significant blood loss. The emotional weight of the 1994 film's portrayal of violence is palpable, making Shelley's character more relatable to audiences who may have personal connections to such traumatic experiences. In contrast, the 2024 version, while still tragic, feels more like a victim of a supernatural crime lord, which may dilute the emotional connection. The villains in the 1994 film were executed much more effectively than in the 2024 version, even though the latter provided them with a more detailed backstory and made them more dimensional. In the original movie, Eric avenges Shelley by killing the 4 individuals who assaulted her with punishments reminiscent of Dante's Inferno, where their own methods of inflicting pain are turned against them. These characters are clearly depicted as criminals motivated by a desire to cause chaos and bond through violence, each trying to outdo the others in their malicious acts. Top Dollar, the mafia boss in the original film, is portrayed as a one-dimensional character whose motivations are limited to his desire for hedonism and destruction. He fixates on making Devil's Night, a night of mayhem before Halloween, more destructive, declaring his intent to start so many fires in Detroit that the smoke will make the angels weep. While this portrayal is simplistic, the actor's performance adds a layer of depth that makes it memorable. However, I found it frustrating that Top Dollar is the only character who uncovers Eric's weakness, which revolves around shooting the crow that accompanies him. This revelation felt contrived, as it seems like any character could have figured it out. In contrast, the 2024 film introduces Vincent, who possesses satanic powers. Although the source of his abilities is never explained, his character is depicted as one who possesses others, driving them to commit homicide or suicide. He uses their blood to maintain his immortality, shielding him from the consequences of death. Unlike Top Dollar, who is driven by a desire for reputation and self-aggrandizement, Vincent appears more like a supernatural entity, lacking relatable motives. One positive aspect of Vincent is that he serves as a formidable obstacle for Eric. Unlike Top Dollar, who is easily defeated, and whose character serves only to highlight Eric's vulnerability through a cliché trope often seen in superhero films, Vincent presents a genuine challenge. This dynamic creates a more engaging confrontation between the two characters, avoiding the need to weaken Eric to make the villain appear powerful. Another point of critique is the character of Marion, Vincent's female partner in the 2024 film. Unfortunately, she does not enhance the narrative. Marion lacks formidable powers and serves merely as Vincent's right-hand woman. I was disappointed that her death is not depicted on screen, which conveys a troubling implication that women cannot be shown suffering violence with the same intensity as men. In contrast, Top Dollar's sister in the original film plays a pivotal role in uncovering Eric's weakness, demonstrating that she is a more effective female counterpart to the villain. The original film also takes the time to develop its antagonists. Characters like Tintin, T-Bird, Skank, and Funboy are introduced one by one, revealing they're obsessed with sex, violence, and drugs. Their eventual realization of Eric's invincibility evokes fear and highlights their accountability for their past sins, adding depth to their characters. The 2024 film, particularly during the opera massacre scene, feels more like a gory homage to Kill Bill, showcasing Eric's violent rampage without the same emotional weight. This contrasts sharply with the original film's shootout set to Nine Inch Nails, which paired aggressive music with violence in a way that felt fresh and impactful. Despite the 2024 version's attempt to provide backstories for its secondary villains, the original film remains more effective. The 1994 version's villains engage in acts of sexual violence and have destructive intentions towards their community, making them more relatable and grounded. In contrast, Marion and Vincent's henchmen lack the same level of connection to the audience, as they serve a supernatural villain who resembles a mafia boss more than a genuine threat. Another crucial aspect to compare is how Eric becomes the Crow in both films. In the 1994 version, after being brutally murdered, a crow lands on Eric's tombstone multiple times before he re-emerges. He discovers his ability to regenerate his body, experience flashbacks of the traumatic events that led to his death, and feel the pain he endured alongside Shelley. Eric's transformation is visually striking, enhanced by the powerful rock music that sets the tone for his journey of revenge. His character, a rock star reminiscent of Kiss with his gothic mask, adds a unique flair. The atmosphere is further intensified by scenes of him running across rain-soaked rooftops with the crow soaring above him. The accompanying score, while energetic, also carries a melancholic undertone, emphasizing that this quest for vengeance is both exhilarating and profoundly sad. This duality echoes themes found in Kill Bill, suggesting that revenge does not always yield a happy ending, such as reclaiming a lost loved one or returning to a time before tragedy struck. In contrast, the 2024 film depicts Eric's death alongside Shelley at the hands of Vincent and his men, who suffocate them with bags over their heads to retrieve a cell phone containing footage of Vincent's satanic powers. After their deaths, Eric finds himself in a purgatorial realm, resembling an abandoned train station overgrown with grass and foliage, where countless crows reside. The entrance to this realm is marked by a watery death, as Eric emerges from the depths. Within this purgatorial space, Eric encounters a character resembling the Grim Reaper, who recites lines from the original film about how a crow guides souls to the afterlife. This character explains that some spirits cannot move on until they rectify their wrongs, and that Eric can gain powers if his love is pure. It is worth noting that both Shelley and the Grim Reaper character are portrayed as people of color, which raises concerns about Hollywood's tendency to include diverse characters for social justice validation, reminiscent of critiques in shows like South Park. While Eric's acquisition of powers in the original film is ambiguous, it is effectively presented through the principle of show, don't tell, allowing the audience to interpret the narrative freely. In contrast, the 2024 film's drawn-out exposition, particularly through the repetitive dialogue of the Grim Reaper character, feels uninspired and lacks motivation. This character fails to resonate, coming across as more annoying than engaging. Another significant point of contrast lies in the cinematography. I favor the original film for its shadowy lighting, muted color palette, and gritty aesthetic, which create an emotional connection with the viewer. Good cinematography immerses the audience in the film's environment, much like in Lawrence of Arabia, where the portrayal of the desert amplifies the treacherous journey of the protagonist. In contrast, the 2024 film, with its budget of $50 million and advancements in technology, exhibits a polished, high-budget look. However, this does not necessarily translate to emotional resonance. The cinematography, while visually appealing, lacks the depth needed to elicit feelings. Effective cinematography should evoke emotion and foster a connection to the film's world. The original film achieves this through its portrayal of a rainy Detroit, mirroring Eric's sorrow and isolation. The towering black buildings and desaturated colors create an oppressive atmosphere that underscores the narrative's bleakness. Furthermore, the original film excels in its use of lighting and color to reflect the environment's harsh realities. The iconic shootout scene with its strobe lights and the dramatic moment when Eric ignites a fire that outlines a burning crow are testaments to the emotional impact of its cinematography. The original film effectively utilizes shadows, limited lighting, and an unsaturated color palette to create a dismal and unwelcoming world. Overall, the original film's ability to achieve so much with a $23 million budget, especially when R-rated superhero films were seen as risky investments, stands in stark contrast to the 2024 film's reliance on a larger budget and advanced technology without delivering the same emotional weight. The original's artistry shines through, making it a more compelling and haunting experience. In conclusion, my deep-rooted preference for the original The Crow over the 2024 remake is profoundly personal and shaped by my own harrowing experiences. During my middle school years, I found myself in the throes of relentless bullying, grappling with the knowledge that my biological mother had neglected me, leaving me covered in my own filth. My adopted parents, instead of providing the understanding I desperately needed, dismissed my pain with phrases like, "Adults have problems too, and you need to forgive and move on." Such attitudes only deepened my feelings of isolation and anger. In the chaos of my household, I witnessed my parents erupt in violent arguments, flipping over tables and hurling insults at one another. I remember the fear that gripped me when one of my dads came dangerously close to hitting me with a vacuum cleaner, and the sting of my other dad's words telling me I was not really his son because I was adopted. I was haunted by the stories of my biological mother's brutality, how she had once taken a glass bottle and struck my brother, and how my biological father was said to have walked out on us, a narrative that I later learned was distorted. These experiences led me to believe that I would inevitably harm others, just as my biological mother had done, pushing me to avoid relationships altogether. My adopted parents' mentality of, suck it up and move on, perhaps stemmed from their own difficult upbringings, but it only taught me to repress my anger and pain. In contrast, Eric from The Crow embodied the freedom to express those very feelings without restriction. His journey of vengeance and emotional catharsis resonated with me, serving as a powerful reminder that it's okay to feel and confront one's pain rather than bury it. When I reflect on the 2024 version of The Crow, I see a director who seems more interested in reimagining a classic for his own sake rather than honoring the rich emotional landscape of the original. As with many remakes, it feels like a hollow attempt to cash in on nostalgia without truly understanding the depths of the story that resonated with so many. While some remakes succeed by reinterpreting source material, like Dune or Mad Max, the decision to revisit a masterpiece like The Crow without the same emotional weight is misguided. Ultimately, while I recognize that the 2024 film may introduce the story to a new generation, I remain skeptical of its intentions and execution. If it finds commercial success, perhaps it could lead to a re-examination of the poorly received sequels, but I doubt we'll ever see a remake that captures the essence of the original. The pain, loss, and yearning for justice in the original The Crow reflects not only a powerful love story, but also an emotional release that I believe will resonate far longer than any attempt to repackage it for modern audiences.